Bolo Yeung has finally broken his silence about Bruce Lee.
35 years before, Bruce Lee fighting.
And what he reveals isn't just shocking, it's bad.
Bruce Lee, then Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then who?
For years, the world has wondered about the mysterious circumstances surrounding Bruce's untimely death, but few have dared to look beyond the headlines to uncover the damage left in its wake.
Bruce Lee's surviving brother has questions about what really happened.
Now, one of the last men to train with Bruce Lee is speaking out, revealing a truth that could change everything.
After Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the next? Nobody. Why?
See, where I was lucky was because
Was Bruce's greatest tragedy not just his fate, but the destruction he left in his wake? Prepare for a revelation that no one saw coming.
This envelope are Bruce Lee's death files. Official documents from the court inquest into his death.
The legendary friendship of Bruce Lee and Bolo Yeung. Bruce Lee wasn't just a martial artist. He was a phenomenon, known for his lightning-fast moves, unparalleled precision, and a philosophy that elevated martial arts to an art form. But even legends need worthy adversaries. Enter Bolo Yeung, the hulking powerhouse renowned for his strength and intensity. Their fates collided on the set of Enter the Dragon, the film that would solidify Bruce's place in cinematic history. But their connection went beyond the silver screen. Bolo Yeung, born Yang Si, was already a martial arts champion long before stepping onto a movie set. With a background in bodybuilding and a deep respect for traditional martial arts, he wasn't just the stereotypical villain on screen. He was a disciplined fighter, admired for his sheer physical prowess. Bruce, ever the visionary, saw in Bolo more than just a towering opponent. He saw a man who understood the essence of martial arts, the balance of strength, speed, and grace. Behind the scenes, their training sessions were something extraordinary. Bolo recalled that Bruce's speed was unlike anything he had ever seen. But what impressed him most wasn't just Bruce's agility, it was his relentless work ethic. While many in the industry were there for the paycheck, Bruce was always pushing himself to be better, refining his craft in ways that no one could have imagined. The two sparred, trained, and challenged each other, creating a bond forged not just in combat, but in mutual respect for the discipline of martial arts. Bruce personally sought Bolo's presence in Enter the Dragon, knowing his imposing figure would bring an extra layer of menace to the film. Though their iconic fight scene was never included in the final cut, their chemistry was undeniable. As they trained, it became clear. While Bruce Lee was the faster, more agile fighter, Bolo was the powerhouse, the perfect yin to Bruce's yang. But as their bond deepened, Bolo began to see something that no one else truly understood. Bruce wasn't just a martial artist, he was a man carrying an immense weight, a weight that, as time went on, would only grow heavier. Bruce Lee's personal life, the man beyond the screen. To the world, Bruce Lee was an untouchable figure, a martial arts icon whose name transcended borders and whose philosophy reshaped global perceptions of martial arts. But behind the electrifying kicks and fierce punches, Bruce was a man with complexities, struggles, and a personal life far removed from the bright lights of Hollywood and the dojo. At home, Bruce was a husband and father, roles that carried a weight just as heavy as his public persona. He met Linda Lee Caldwell when she was a student at his martial arts school in Seattle. Their connection was instant, and by 1964, they were married. Together, they built a life, a family, and later, 2 children, Brandon and Shannon. From the outside, it seemed like the perfect picture of success. Bruce was rising fast in Hollywood, with his groundbreaking films such as The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, making him a global sensation. Yet as much as Bruce loved his family, the pressure that came with his fame started to erode the very foundation of his personal life. Bruce was not just an actor, he was a force of nature, determined to change the way Asians were portrayed in Hollywood. This mission consumed him, and as he soared to stardom, the demands on his time and energy grew. His marriage to Linda, though rooted in love, began to suffer as Bruce became increasingly absorbed in his vision for martial arts and film. Linda watched as Bruce's obsession with perfection and his ceaseless training began to take a toll on him. He worked tirelessly, often staying up late into the night to write, research, and refine his techniques. The physical strain was immense, and his body, despite its seemingly untouchable strength, was beginning to show signs of wear. His weight fluctuated, his energy drained, and worse, Bruce started experiencing debilitating headaches. a symptom he stubbornly ignored. But it wasn't just physical fatigue that was slowly unraveling Bruce. The emotional strain was no less severe. Rumors swirled about his interactions with other women, particularly with Betty Ting Pei, a rising star in Hong Kong's film industry. Though Bruce and Betty's connection was downplayed by many as nothing more than friendship, those closest to Bruce sensed a deeper emotional pull. This created a growing tension between Bruce's public and private lives, with Linda caught in the middle, silently enduring the pain of a marriage under intense scrutiny. As the weight of fame, family, and personal conflicts grew, Bruce Lee's life began to spiral in ways that were invisible to the world. To everyone around him, he seemed invincible, but behind closed doors, the pressure was becoming too much to bear. The woman who loved Bruce Lee, Betty Ting Pei. Betty Ting Pei's name has always lingered in the background of Bruce Lee's story, a figure shrouded in mystery and speculation. While the world knew Bruce as a fearless warrior on screen, Betty was one of the few people who saw him as more than just a legend. She knew the side of Bruce that few ever did, a man burdened by the weight of his fame and the pressures it brought. Betty, an actress in Hong Kong, was rising through the ranks of the film industry in her own right. She wasn't just another starlet drawn to Bruce's magnetic presence. She had her career, her ambitions. But something about Bruce's energy, his passion, his drive, drew her in. She wasn't the first to be captivated by him, but she became one of the most important figures in his life, especially in the final years. Their connection went beyond the typical actor-fan dynamic. Bruce would visit Betty's apartment, seeking solace from the chaos of his rising stardom. With Betty, there were no expectations, no cameras, just a quiet space where Bruce could be vulnerable. He was, after all, a man who rarely slowed down, constantly fighting not just opponents, but also his inner demons. Betty became his refuge, a place where he could recharge and momentarily escape the weight of the world on his shoulders. However, the true nature of their relationship has always been the subject of debate. Some insist that they were just friends. Others suggest there was something more. What is clear, though, is that Betty played a pivotal role in Bruce's life, offering him comfort when the world around him was anything but comforting. But when Bruce died, Betty became more than just a friend. She became an enigma, the woman who was there in his final moments, forever linked to his tragic end. July 20th, 1973, was meant to be just another day in the whirlwind life of Bruce Lee. He had meetings lined up, including a final round of dubbing for Enter the Dragon, his breakout film that had already begun to solidify his legacy as a martial arts icon. He was also deeply involved in developing Game of Death, a project that had become his obsession. But that morning, there were signs that something wasn't quite right. Bruce had been complaining of severe headaches for weeks. His weight had dropped significantly, and he was showing signs of exhaustion, though he pushed through it. Doctors had warned him to slow down, to take better care of himself, but true to Bruce's relentless nature, he ignored the warnings, continuing to train and work, even when his body was telling him to rest. After he met with producer Raymond Chow, Bruce headed to Betty Ting Pei's apartment. The two had planned to go over some script ideas for Game of Death, but Bruce was not feeling well. He mentioned his headache to Betty, who, in a bid to ease his discomfort, gave him a painkiller. He lay down to rest, hoping to recover before the next round of meetings. Hours passed and Betty checked on him, only to find that Bruce had not woken up. He was unresponsive and panic soon set in. Despite efforts to revive him, Bruce Lee was pronounced dead. The official cause was cerebral edema, a sudden swelling of the brain, likely triggered by a reaction to the painkiller he had taken. It was a shocking and tragic turn of events, especially considering Bruce's age, only 32, and his seemingly perfect health. The world was stunned. Bruce Lee, the man who seemed invincible, the one who had defied physical limits time and again, was gone in the blink of an eye. Theories immediately began to circulate: poisoning, curses, or secret attacks. But the cold reality was this: Bruce had been a man who had pushed himself beyond his limits, and in the end, it was his body that had given way. Bolo Yeung's perspective on Bruce Lee's death. When news of Bruce Lee's death spread on July 20th, 1973, Bolo Yeung couldn't believe it. Bruce, a man he had trained with, sparred with, and respected deeply, was gone. The shock was nearly too much to bear, especially for someone like Bolo, who had seen and experienced a lifetime of challenges in the martial arts world. He had known Bruce as not just a fighter, but a force of nature, strong, disciplined, and unrelenting. How could someone like that simply vanish? Bolo, who had spent countless hours in the gym with Bruce, had always admired his dedication to his craft. He had never seen anyone push themselves so hard, so relentlessly. Bruce was a man who didn't know the meaning of rest. His work ethic was unmatched, and he never stopped training, constantly refining his techniques, even when the cameras weren't rolling. To Bolo, Bruce was invincible, not just in body, but also in mind and spirit. Yet in the days following his death, Bolo couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Bruce's battle was one he couldn't win. As the world speculated wildly about the cause of Bruce's death, Bolo remained silent. He didn't subscribe to the wild conspiracy theories that suggested foul play or a secret assassination. Instead, Bolo had his theory, one that centered around the immense pressure Bruce had faced throughout his life. Bruce wasn't just fighting opponents in the ring or on film sets. He was fighting against the expectations, the weight of his fame, and the unrelenting drive to be perfect. And sometimes, even the most disciplined warriors aren't prepared for the toll that kind of pressure can take. Looking back, Bolo began to see the signs that others had missed. Bruce had been more than just physically exhausted. He had been emotionally and mentally drained. His obsession with perfection and his constant push to prove himself had consumed him. Bolo saw this, but at the time, he hadn't realized how much it was affecting Bruce. The signs were there: the fatigue, the headaches, the weight loss. But Bruce, ever the fighter, had brushed them off. In the end, it was his body that couldn't keep up. The woman who had been there when Bruce took his last breath. She was no longer just Betty Ting Pei. She became the woman with Bruce Lee when he died, a title that carried with it a weight that few could comprehend. The media sensationalized her connection to Bruce, painting her as everything from a grieving lover to a woman with sinister knowledge of his death. The rumors and accusations flew, and no matter how much she tried to move on with her career, she couldn't escape the shadow of that day. The public scrutinized her every move, questioning the details of that fateful afternoon and speculating on her role in Bruce's final moments. But Betty never wavered in her account. She insisted that Bruce had simply come to her apartment to rest, that he had taken a painkiller for his headache, and that he never woke up. It was a simple truth, yet it didn't stop the storm of speculation. In the end, Betty was left not just mourning the loss of a friend, but also bearing the emotional and psychological burden of a life irrevocably altered by the tragedy. Bolo Yeung finally breaks his silence. For decades, Bolo Yeung remained silent about the death of his close friend and martial arts legend, Bruce Lee. Conspiracy theories consumed the world around him. Whispers of poisoning, secret assassinations, or curses, each theory more sensational than the last. But Bolo, who had trained with Bruce, sparred with him and witnessed his relentless drive, never spoke out. He chose to keep his thoughts private, perhaps because he knew there was more to Bruce's story than the world was ready to hear. However, when Bolo finally broke his silence, the truth he revealed was not what anyone had expected. He didn't focus on the dramatic theories of foul play or hidden enemies. Instead, Bolo shared something simpler and far more painful. He revealed that Bruce had, in a way, killed Betty Ting Pei, not by any violent act, but emotionally, by bringing Betty into his chaotic world. By allowing her to witness his struggles and pressures, Bruce left behind a deep, unspoken burden. In Bolo's eyes, Bruce's greatest tragedy wasn't just his death. It was the lasting emotional scars he left on those closest to him. Betty, forever linked to Bruce's final moments, carried that weight throughout her life. She never escaped the shadow of his death, even as she tried to move on. Bolo's words struck a chord. The physical battles Bruce won were legendary, but it was the unseen emotional toll, the battle within, that was the true cost of his legacy. Bruce Lee's untimely death left a profound legacy, not just in martial arts but in the lives of those who were closest to him. While the world mourned his loss, few understood the unseen emotional toll it took on people like Bolo Yeung and Betty Ting Pei. Bruce's internal struggles, hidden from the public eye, were his greatest battles.